Hey guys, welcome to Ukrainian Couple. Well, if you guys are new to the channel, I've been living in Ukraine for the past 10 years, and recently, because of the war, I moved out of there. Well, because nobody really knows how the Ukrainian war will turn out, one thing remains kind of like set in stone, and that's what I want to talk about here. And that is how Ukraine will change the world order. I personally think, and this is where it's all going, I think there will be a definitive line and a great divide between democratic and non-democratic countries in the world. I think the battleground will be within like countries that have had historically a difficult relationship with America. We're talking about South American countries like Mexico, Brazil, Central America, South Africa, Southeast Asia, countries that border China. And the biggest change of the world order really is that these fence-sitting countries are either gonna fall under the democratic fold, or they're gonna go further under the influence of China. In the latter scenario, the American dominance and against the American power is going to decline, and that is obviously, what the Western world doesn't want to see. So whatever happens, really, I think it's going to be a very powerful notion, and probably the most powerful one of our lifetimes. So what I want to do is I want to kind of illustrate this with what has happened with Nazi Germany. I came across this quote from the Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels. It's kind of like disputed if he actually wrote it in his diary, but apparently he wrote it in his diary in 1945 when Germany was already losing the war, and it was obvious, it was a matter of weeks that they would be caught, as the Soviets were coming into Berlin, and the Western governments, America was taking over Western Germany. There was some misconceptions about whether or not he said that publicly or not. So he said that the war may have been lost, but at least we have the comfort of knowing we exterminated the stupidity of the European bourgeois world. So what did he mean by that? Like that they exterminated the stupidity of the European bourgeois world. Didn't Germany lose World War II? What have they exactly exterminated, right? Well, I think what he meant was that Germany may have lost militarily. The fact of the matter is that the Nazis, they've sort of overturned the entire European social and political world order. And the Nazis were, part of their goals was to establish a new world order, and they've partially succeeded in doing so. But in a different way, really, not exactly what they've expected. They've had a vision of the Third Reich and whatnot, but they have not accomplished it, but they've accomplished something else, right? Well, what do I mean by that? I mean, many people think and believe that World War II was a continuation of World War I. It was really like one giant war that was just interrupted briefly by some peace talks that fell apart, right? Obviously, World War I left a lot of unresolved geopolitical questions that were resolved with World War II, with the defeat of the Nazis. So how did that happen? How did the world order change after the defeat of the Nazis? Well, the biggest one really is the elimination of the notion of the European Empire. Britain lost their crown jewel, India, 2 years after the end of the war. The French, British, Dutch, and other European colonists lost their colonies at the end of the war. And why? Why did that happen? Because the Nazis changed the world order and they changed the geopolitical sphere. Another way that they've done it is that they've kind of shifted the focus from Europe. Europe was before the focus of everything, and it wasn't the focus of everything anymore. Like, for example, London used to be the seat of the financial and the world economic power, and that wasn't the case. People that controlled the world, they moved from London to the United States. Now, people from Washington, D.C., from New York City, from Moscow, they were all competing, these cities were really competing to be the powers, the central powers of the world. Paris, right, used to be the cultural and the philosophical center of the world. You had artists, writers in the 19th century, right? In the 20th century, you had artists, writers still congregating there in Paris. And that has changed, right? That's changed. They all, again, moved to the United States. The United States was the cultural capital now of the world. Many of them, as a result of the war, right, they moved to the United States and they spread their ideas there. All you got to do is look at a map of Europe between 1800s and 1945 to 1945 onwards just to see how big of a difference that was. So in a sense, the British, the French, the Germans, the Dutch, the Belgians, they've lost so much. They've lost so much more than they've gained during the war. And that is a very big point that people have to understand, that wars are just about loss. They're never about any kind of gain. The chips will fall down, as they say, where they fall, and that's just going to be what it is. And usually it's not really different from what we had before. So how does all of that apply to Russia? Well, I think that the world will see Russia in a different light. That's like 100%, right? The world will see Russia and countries like it, like China maybe, developing countries that are trying to be authoritarian. The world will see them in a different way, and that's the certainty. I mean, I've said it before, Ukraine will survive. It's going to survive, it's going to win, it's going to survive and thrive as a democratic country. But Russia's actions will make democracies around the world less and less tolerant of that kind of behavior. It's going to make the Western world will be less tolerant of countries like Russia, of autocratic regimes. Russia, Iran, China, North Korea. Like after the war, these countries will become even more, thrown out of the public discourse. They will be labeled more and more as, rogue states and countries that, should be kicked out of any kind of international organization. They should be isolated even more and more than they are right now. So that's going to be the tendency, I think. And all of that is because Putin is trying to undermine the world. He's trying to take away that fundamental cornerstone that we've all established in 1945. He's trying to shake things up. And the world understands that, and the world is watching, and the world will take action as a consequence of that. And why am I just referring back to this 1945 world order that was established? Well, because it hasn't been touched until 2022, right? It hasn't been touched until February of 2022. The question hasn't risen up until that point. And this redrawing of borders is going to have some terrible consequences because, again, we haven't seen anything like this happen since 1945. And we don't want these activities, these redrawing of borders, we don't want them to set a new precedent. We don't want a collapse of basically what the world stands for right now, because it could lead to that. It could very well lead to that. And I think that the Western world is pretty much aware of it, thankfully. They're aware of it, especially America. They're aware of what it would mean if their power is undermined on a grand scale. And this is something that we're all fighting for, that's what we're all fighting for in the West. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video and there were some takeaways from it. And yeah, it's going to be my last video of the year. And we'll see all of you guys in the next year. Take care, guys.